Hi, welcome back to this week's episode of your Vibe Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Ileana. Today, I am talking about choosing curiosity over fear. Hey guys, before we get into this week's episode, make sure if you're not already following or subscribe to the podcast, make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. Also, if you're enjoying the content that we're putting out week by week, please make sure to share it to your socials. It really helps this platform grow. It helps support me directly. That way I can put in more time and effort into creating more valuable content for you guys. Fear is absolutely a primal emotion. You know, that feeling of like the hair rising in the back of your shoulders when you're in a scary situation. Fear is given to us as a way to sense danger, that danger is coming, danger is near. So it's there to obviously help protect us. But in our modern world, there's not as many outside fears. But I think because there's a lack of intense fear that's happening every single day, like it was before, back in the hunter-gatherer times, we tend to create fears in our daily lives. A lot of us are afraid of starting something new, right? Maybe we're afraid of failure. Maybe we're afraid of doing something and only being good at one thing for the rest of your life. A lot of us have fears of starting families. A lot of us have fears of losing a partner, right? We have fear of death. We have fear of losing a loved one, having our loved ones not love us back. There's so many fears. I mean, after fear, it's kind of like an endless abyss. We need to learn how to start checking ourselves and checking our fears to make sure that it's not inhibiting our life's growth and the chances that we take in life. Now, on the other hand, a lot of us, I don't know if we necessarily understand curiosity. I think sometimes there are certain people that are just more curious than others. And then there are some that are a little bit more fearful than curious, right? When I was younger, I was a lot more curious. So even though I was curious about something, I think the fear in me always trumped my curiosity. And in a rightful way, I think when you're young, sometimes you can make poor decisions because you're curious. And so you lean more into the curiosity, and then you don't necessarily think of all the negative impacts that your curiosity and the decisions you make because you're curious can cause you. I think the older I got, the more that I let my kind of fear and that fear of making a wrong mistake or fear of doing of something negative happening in my life trump my curiosity. But I do think that curiosity is absolutely necessary in your life. So what is curiosity, right? Your want for exploration. It's your wonder of what something is. And it's that ability to question things around you, to question the people around you. But I think curiosity is also very necessary in learning more. Like most analytical careers, scientists and engineers, people that are big innovators, they're naturally curious because they ask a lot of questions, right? They want to know why things are the way they are. What the why behind everything is super important to them. And I think some of us naturally question things a lot more than others. And I do think it is super important to be curious and to question the things around you, question the thoughts that you have, question why you're having the thoughts that you're having, and having a naturally curious mindset or cultivating a curious mindset if you're not naturally curious is super beneficial because it allows you to learn and to be in a growth and a learner's mindset, which I think is super, super important in growing as a person and also stepping into situations where you're not necessarily in control, but you're able to accept it and welcome it with open arms. And I think being more curious is something that can help benefit your life. And the reason I pair these two on separate spectrums, like fear and curiosity, because for example, let's say, and I'm just speaking from my experience, I recently had to make a change into a new career path. And I think a lot of us, we could spend so much time working towards a goal, working towards something that we want. And then we realize one day, like, this isn't necessarily making me happy or filling up my cup anymore. And I went through a similar situation where the current job that I had wasn't really fulfilling me anymore, and it wasn't making me happy anymore. And I had to make the decision, like, am I going to lean into curiosity and explore what else could fulfill me and what else could make me happy, or if I was going to lean into fear and let fear dictate my choice. I don't think that we should let fear ever dictate a decision that we make in life. And when I say that you choose curiosity over fear, I'm not telling you to completely rule out any risk, right? I'm not telling you to step into situations and completely rule out any negative outcomes that might happen, because it's important to assess risk when you're making any situation. There's a difference between assessing risk and being fearful of all of these things that could potentially happen that are probably not going to happen. But you should assess risk and then make a decision leaning towards curiosity and the possibilities and the positive possibilities that could come from the situation, rather than all the negative possibilities, right? And letting that fear take over. And then I always speak from experience with my podcast, because my podcast to me has always been a creative outlet. It's also been almost like therapeutic opportunity for me to like express how I'm feeling. And it's also prompted me to ask myself some really deep questions and a lot of why questions in my life. And this podcast has provided me that platform, right? To also do a lot of introspective work with myself, but I also feel like I get a chance to help others and to bring new perspectives to different people, right? I could let fear dictate me showing up, right? Because like I could choose to look at what I'm doing, right? And say all of these crazy things, like all of these crazy assumptions that come out of fear, like, I could be wasting my time doing all these videos every week. I could look at it like this is a waste of time. I could look at it as like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think of me putting my videos online? And like, what are my friends going to think? What is my family going to think? Are they going to think that I'm wasting my time doing my silly videos? What are my coworkers going to think of me doing these videos every single week? And like, how dare she like put all this time and energy into like something that is so meaningless? But those are fears and negative thoughts that I'm creating, when instead of thinking of all of these negative things and all of these fears that I'm doing, I could lean into the fact that I get to express myself creatively. I get to explore deep personal spiritual parts of myself that do have a lot of meaning to me, and that probably have a meaning to somebody that's going to watch it and that needs to hear what I have to say. There's so many more beautiful things that come out of leaning into that curiosity and to the possibilities, because I don't know what this could mean, right? And me expressing myself and me creating and sharing this podcast, it could have a crazy effect on my life. It could have a crazy effect on somebody else's life. And so I choose to lean into the hand of curiosity and exploration and possibility, rather than fear and being scared of the worst case scenario. You're probably wondering, Eliana, so you're asking me to choose curiosity over fear. Okay, well, how can I become a more curious person? Because we're not all born curious. So if you're like me, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm not naturally curious, or maybe you are, but you want to know how you can become even more curious, I'm going to give you 3 ways that you can start to be more curious in your own life. One, super easy, just start asking more questions. Question everything. And I don't mean it to sound like you need to start being a skeptic, but you should ask questions. Whenever you encounter something new, whenever you don't know what something's about, just ask questions like, oh, why is that? How does that work? Like, oh, why do you like that? I question my friends all the time. I question my partner. And it's not because I'm trying to dig into why they, like, oh, why do you think like that? It's not in a negative way, but it gives you an opportunity to learn someone's perspective, to understand why someone is the way that they are. Just ask more questions, because once you start asking more questions, you're shifting from a mindset of apprehension and like you're not sure, and you're shifting your mindset into someone that's open, into someone that's a learner, into someone that's open to just more perspectives and different point of views. And I think ultimately that makes you a more well-rounded, educated person. Number 2, I want you to start embracing uncertainty, because uncertainty is just a part of life in general. We can control certain things in our life, but there's a lot of things that are thrown at us that just end up happening. I actually heard a quote yesterday that I think this quote came from Mike Tyson, quote that I think is so perfect for what I'm talking about. And it's everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that is just so true because life will throw curveballs at you. Life will throw crazy things your way. And only the people that learn to be flexible, that learn to be open minded, right, that learn to be curious to figure out, like, how can I solve this? Those are the people that make it. Those are the people that flourish, and those are the people that grow. Number 3, this is my favorite way, and I've mentioned this plenty of times. If you've listened to a couple of episodes, you might know what I'm about to say, but it's to start taking small steps with anything that comes your way. Anything seems overwhelming at first, right? If you try to tackle everything at once, right? But leaning into that curiosity, start asking more questions, start being more open, and take small steps, right? You don't need to take on a new opportunity or a new challenge all at once. You need to look at it day by day, step by step, and almost like learn to embrace the journey of what you're taking on, like this new opportunity, this new idea. Don't try to understand everything at once. Just like break it down into smaller parts, because it will seem and it will be a lot more manageable, and it'll reduce that fear and that anxiety and that stress that we create in our lives, because we're just taking on one step at a time. We're not trying to climb the whole mountain, just one step at a time. All right, guys. Ultimately, choosing to live your life in a curiosity mindset instead of a fearful mindset is a huge shift, and it's not going to happen overnight. But if you take these small steps every single day, you can really transform your mindset and your perspective. And really ask yourself, next time you're faced with a decision, a choice in life, ask yourself, am I going to lean into fear or am I going to lean into curiosity? All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Hopefully, you found it insightful. And if you are enjoying the content that we're putting out week by week, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like the video, whatever platform you're listening on. If you're not already following my podcast, make sure to follow and subscribe on your listening platform. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.